Hello and welcome to Murphy's Garden. I thought it would be interesting to do a little video on hedging. One of the things when you first move into a new garden or you're designing an area is to plan what kind of boundaries you're going to have. Obviously you can have fencing or trellis, which we've used quite a bit in this garden, but the other option is to look at different types of hedging. I know when I first started out I didn't really know where to begin. So over the years we have put in lots of different types of hedging, so I thought it would be quite a nice idea just to look at the advantages and disadvantages of each of the types and what it's like throughout the season in each one.
Most trees and shrubs can be made into a hedge. This video will look at some of the most common and the ones grown in this garden. Hedges can be evergreen, semi-evergreen or deciduous. As a general rule, evergreen should be planted in early autumn and deciduous hedges planted in mid-autumn to late winter. Hedging plants can be purchased as bare root, root ball or pot grown.
Right, so this is Leylandi or Leyland cypress. This hedge gets a bad press because it's notoriously involved in neighbour disputes where people have let the hedge grow way too tall, which casts a big shadow and obviously dries the soil underneath, so you can't grow anything underneath. But if it's looked after well, it's actually a really good hedge. We're using it here. It backs onto a drive. The other thing about it is it's fantastic for to absorb air pollution. So if you live by a busy road, apparently it's one of the best hedges for getting rid of emissions. So it's good to use in that scenario. We've put it here because we get the wind coming in off the open farmland beyond, and so that's to act as a windbreaker, and also to act for privacy because of the shared driveway. As people drive past, they can see directly into our property. So it really does what it's meant to do. We did initially plant a beech hedge in this area, but we find it was very slow to establish, and in the end we've actually moved that elsewhere, so we'll come on to that in a bit. But the thing with Leylandi, you must cut it at least every year, but preferably 2 or even up to 3 times a year, and if you do that then you can manage it very well. This has been in now for about four and a half years. It is surprising to see that it still hasn't thickened up. It's still quite patchy. So I was quite surprised. I thought we would have quite a dense hedge by this stage, but no, it's still a little bit patchy in places. But depending on how much you're willing to spend, it's quite cheap for what you get in terms of height. This was you know, probably about my height when we bought it. Although it wasn't as bushy, but it's been a good hedge from day one. We did put in a windbreaker, some material just to help the hedge establish. We've got a hedge over to this side which has been in a year longer, and that's getting a lot bushier. When you prune it, it's a good idea to just prune it slightly narrower at the top and wider at the bottom. Leylandi, if it does die, it doesn't regenerate from old wood, so that's one thing to bear in mind. It won't regenerate, but other than that, it's a good hedge. So this is the beech hedge. So this is the original hedge that we planted round the perimeter of the garden where the Leylandi now is. We moved it, it was planted in 2013, and then we moved it here in 2016, just because it wasn't really providing the privacy that we needed. So here it's much nicer, and it also looks lovely with the dark green backdrop of the Leylandi. Beech makes a lovely hedge. It's got beautiful colour in the spring, and then it also has lovely autumnal autumn colours in the autumn. So it is a really nice hedge. It will grow. It makes a good hedge from about 1 metre to about 5 metres, and it will grow about 30 to 60 centimetres in a year. But as I say, from our experience, we just find it quite slow to establish. It is late coming out, so it's the middle of May and these leaves are just opening, so that's one disadvantage, but it does hold on to the old leaves. So if you can see, these leaves are the old leaves, so it will hold on to these leaves until the new ones come through. So it means you do have some screening until the new ones come through. So this is the yew hedge, and this yew hedge we planted in 2013, and this is my favourite of all the hedging. I love yew hedging, and it's got a reputation of being very slow growing, but that's a bit of a myth really. It will grow up to 1 foot a year, and in fact I think it's growing faster than that for us. But the idea is if you don't cut the main stem, once you cut the main stem, it then becomes a slow growing hedge. But if you leave the main stem, you can cut the sides, but leave the main stem until it's at the height you want. So we still haven't topped this hedge. We want it probably to be about 6 foot tall, which it is in places, but maybe just a little bit higher than that. So it needs free draining soil. And the other thing is if you have an old hedge or an area dies, you can cut right into the old wood and it will regenerate. So if you've got a very old hedge, it's best to sort of have a 3-year approach where you top it and then the next year you take the sides in on one side and then the other side the 3rd year. And from doing that you can really regenerate what is quite a horrible looking hedge into something really nice. So this one, as I say, we've planted from probably about this height. We'll post some pictures of what it was like when we first planted it. But it's a very hardy hedge. It provides good food and shelter for animals. It does have some little red berries on it. And yeah, as I say, it grows, I say, over 1 foot in a year. But yeah, it's a really, really good hedge, and it also is really good for topiary. So yeah, I can't recommend this one enough. I suppose is because it's very dark green, it can, if you plant too much of it, I suppose it could look quite oppressive because it's dark. So it's nice to plant something lighter, and it works really well. We plant white tulips here, and it really, you know, zings and pings against this dark backdrop. So this is box hedging. It's lovely and tactile. This is the most established box hedging, the first one that I put in back in 2013, but we've got box hedging all over the garden, because I absolutely love it, and it's at various stages of growth, so we can have a look at that. One of the nice things about box, it's a nice compact low growing hedge. I've used it here with roses and nepeta, and what I like about it is that roses can look quite ugly at the bottom, especially in winter. So by having this, it kind of hides the not so nice part of the roses and just shows off the flowers. We've got Scarborough Fair, which is a David Austin rose growing with it, and it looks really lovely. Obviously, we've all heard of horror stories with box blight, so that's been a big problem. We've got very sandy soil here. I'm hoping that we won't get it, but I know it is a big problem, particularly with very wet, wet soil that doesn't drain very well. So we just try and look after it. We feed it regularly, cut it whenever it's dry, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it will keep going. But it can be pruned. We prune it around about June time and try and clear up all the leaves as best we can to stop any disease. But yes, it's a really lovely hedge, and it would be very sad if anything happened to it because I love it. This is privet hedging, my least favourite of all the hedging that we've got, certainly. We had a privet hedge at the back of our garden, just in front of where the yew hedging is, and we cut it and we looked after it and we tried to sort of make it into a nice shape as much as possible. It's very difficult to keep in a nice shape because it grows quite rapidly and it becomes quite scruffy. This hedging has been cut, it gets cut at least every year, if not twice, and I just find it a bit scruffy. I mean, this is an old hedge. This must be, I don't know, 30, 35 years old. So perhaps if it's a newer hedge, it might be nicer. But in my experience, not very keen on it. And I have got ambitions of taking this hedge out and planting a yew hedge in its place. I think that would look nicer, but I've got to work on my husband before we can do that, but we should see. This is laurel hedging, mixed views on this. It's a very popular hedge. It's a very popular hedge, lots of people love it. We've chosen to plant it here, and this is a driveway which was all concrete underneath with gravel on top. So we had to break through the concrete to get to some soil, and we've backfilled it with soil, and we planted the laurels into it. This side is doing quite well, it looks okay. However, on this side, it's just not successful at all. Quite yellow, the leaves are quite yellow. I've been feeding it, giving it a seaweed feed, and it's not really doing a great deal, which is a shame. Whether it just hasn't got enough soil. I don't think it's because of the actual hedging choice. I think it is ordinarily a good choice of hedging, but in this case, it's not worked very well. The birds do like it and everything, and the thing that likes it best of all is Murphy. He goes in there, that's his little house, he goes in there and he takes things in there like our slippers out the garage and hides them in there. So Murphy likes it, but I'm not sure that I do particularly. This is Hornbeam, which makes a lovely, lovely hedge. We've used it here in a pleach version. You can just plant it as a normal hedge, similar to beech, but because we were overlooked, we've got a window, neighbour's window, looking directly into the garden, so we decided to look at doing a pleached hedge. We've used Hornbeam, could have used lime. Lime's another one that pleaches really nicely, and I've got lime elsewhere in the garden, but we decided to use Hornbeam because I think lime can produce like a sap which might be a bit sticky on the path. So we've planted 10 trees. Hornbeam doesn't mind quite windy sites, so we do get a lot of wind in this garden. So we've put in really sturdy structures. We've got big poles at either end, and then we've got each tree supported by 2 wooden posts, and then it's also got the horizontal tie-in as well. It comes on this bamboo structure, so it's quite unwieldy to plant. It was very difficult to line everything up and make it precise, but we're really delighted. It's been in since 2014. It's maturing really, really well, so much so that we've decided to plant another 8 trees on the other side. So the 8 trees went in just only in March. We bought them just as standard trees. You can see, we'll post the video of us planting them, but they were much easier to plant because they didn't have the structure already attached to them. So we've put them in, and over the next video we'll be showing how to pleach them and how to attach them to the bamboo. So we've got that to do, but yeah, it's a lovely hedge. It looks really good. Thanks very much for watching, and join us in the next video.